The night my marriage completely collapsed was the exact moment I finally saw their true colors. My name is Victoria. I am 39 years old, but the night my marriage shattered, I was standing in my silent bedroom gripping my packed suitcase along with my daughter's belongings. I stared at my phone screen glowing brightly in the darkness, where a Telegram group chat with over 50 members, including his colleagues, mutual friends, alongside my own relatives, was actively humiliating me. My husband had just sent a message that delivered a fatal blow to my self-esteem, exposing his ultimate cruelty in front of everyone, without a single ounce of hesitation or respect. He typed out every single word with absolute malice, declaring that his ugly old wife was finally gone, while mocking how I used to cry over minor things before calling me completely useless. Instead of stepping up to defend me against this public humiliation, my screen continuously lit up with laughing emojis, alongside dozens of mocking messages from my very own mother, plus my younger brother, who cruelly sided with him. I did not shed a single tear while reading those toxic messages because I calmly took screenshots of the entire conversation to preserve as undeniable evidence. I grabbed our suitcases to walk out the front door, initiating a flawless plan that would make all of them pay a very heavy price exactly 2 weeks later. Before I reveal exactly what happened after I drove away, or how their mockery turned into desperate begging, please tell me where you are watching from today. I really want to see how far this story reaches, so subscribe to the channel if you want to know how I made them regret everything. My car sped through the windy streets of Boston while leaving behind 10 wasted years of my youth, alongside a completely fake family facade. My husband Gregory constantly deluded himself into believing he was a brilliant tech startup CEO who single-handedly brought wealth into our household. He firmly believed that every single asset we currently possessed was the direct result of his own unmatched business acumen. My mother Martha, alongside my younger brother Jared, entirely shared this exact same arrogant financial delusion. Both of them viewed Gregory as the ultimate provider, while treating me like a completely useless stay-at-home mother who possessed absolutely no financial voice whatsoever. They were always ready to trample all over my self-esteem because they genuinely thought I was just a dependent burden who merely got lucky by marrying a successful man. The undeniable truth was that Gregory never bothered to read any legal documents carefully throughout our entire marriage. He operated under the arrogant assumption that the massive commercial office building housing his company, alongside the enormous credit line he freely spent, were simply natural perks he acquired by being my husband. He strutted around his luxurious corner office signing meaningless papers while remaining blissfully ignorant about who actually owned the ground beneath his expensive leather shoes. I spent years quietly managing a highly complex online job, handling high-level financial risk management protocols from my laptop, while letting him play the role of the dominant alpha male. The funeral for my grandmother Evelyn took place exactly 3 days ago in a very private ceremony. She was the only person in my entire bloodline who truly saw through the toxic greed infecting my relatives. During the closed-door will reading, the estate attorney officially confirmed that she had transferred total control of her massive commercial trust fund directly into my hands. She established incredibly strict conditions within the legal paperwork, specifically designed to protect her lifelong assets from any manipulative gold diggers or abusive spouses. The trust explicitly dictated that I was the sole decision-maker regarding the commercial lease agreements currently keeping Gregory afloat. Gregory dared to humiliate me publicly on that group chat precisely because he was absolutely convinced I possessed zero real power over his life. He felt perfectly comfortable treating me like garbage because he thought my departure would only relieve him of a nagging burden. He completely failed to realize that his entire tech empire was built upon a fragile foundation of my silent financial guarantees. He had absolutely no idea that I was currently holding the executioner's key to the survival of his entire company. I knew significantly more about his precarious financial reality than anyone else in his circle could ever possibly comprehend. Jared practically lived off the secondary credit cards I quietly authorized through the trust fund, while praising his brother-in-law for the generous allowance. Mom constantly bragged to her country club friends about her wealthy son-in-law, while ignoring the factual reality that I was the one manually approving her monthly maintenance deposits. They eagerly joined his cruel online mockery, because mocking me had become their favorite bonding activity over the past decade. Their collective contempt blinded them to the undeniable fact that they were biting the exact hand feeding their lavish lifestyles. As I continued driving through the freezing Boston night with my sleeping daughter securely buckled in the back seat, my mind shifted away from their cruel insults toward the cold mathematical reality of their impending doom. I mentally reviewed the extensive spreadsheet containing every single corporate liability account tied directly to my authorization. Gregory was scheduled to renew his commercial property lease agreement at the end of this current month, an agreement that required my explicit signature to maintain the $0 rent status he currently enjoyed. Their profound ignorance regarding my legal authority over these commercial assets was about to become their ultimate downfall. I was no longer a victim fleeing a toxic environment, but rather a property manager preparing to issue a massive reality check. The first dawn at my newly rented apartment arrived as a bitterly cold morning, while my phone screen continuously illuminated the dark room with incoming mocking text messages. Jared was actively texting me sarcastic remarks about how quickly I would fail in the real world, while predicting my inevitable return to their doorstep begging for forgiveness. Martha chimed in through a separate message thread to criticize my dramatic exit, while insisting that I was overreacting to a harmless joke made by a stressed husband. My best friend Chloe had already arrived quite early to help me unpack some essential boxes scattered across the living room floor. She quietly observed the profound exhaustion mixed with internal conflict visible in my eyes as I repeatedly picked up my device before setting it back down. I was staring blankly at the glaring financial dashboard displayed across my glowing laptop screen while contemplating the massive weight of my impending decision. Truthfully speaking, the act of manually pressing a single button to completely demolish the financial stability of my own family did not bring me any immediate sense of vindication or joy. Executing this particular maneuver required me to forcibly overcome a massive psychological barrier built by a decade of functioning as a woman entirely accustomed to endless sacrifice. I had spent my entire adult life meticulously preserving their lavish lifestyles while deliberately suppressing my own emotional needs just to maintain a fragile peace within that incredibly toxic household. They had conditioned me to believe that my primary purpose was to silently absorb their disrespect while ensuring their bills were quietly paid on time. I slowly navigated through the highly secure commercial trust management portal while feeling a very noticeable tremor vibrating through my fingertips. My mouse cursor hovered directly over the specific administrative option designed to permanently revoke the corporate credit guarantee, currently keeping Gregory alongside his failing startup company afloat. I stared at the massive credit limit he had been treating as his own personal piggy bank, while realizing how quickly his arrogant CEO facade would crumble without my invisible backing. Simultaneously, I needed to initiate the immediate freezing protocols for the two secondary luxury credit cards that Martha, alongside Jared, had been continuously exploiting for their daily extravagant purchases. Chloe walked over to my makeshift desk to place a steaming cup of black coffee right beside my trembling hand, before looking directly into my eyes with absolute, unwavering resolve. She firmly reminded me about the sheer cruelty they had publicly inflicted upon me just hours prior on that humiliating Telegram group chat. She wanted to ensure I completely remembered how easily they typed out those vicious insults while treating my painful departure as some sort of hilarious punchline for their mutual entertainment. Chloe firmly tapped her index finger against the wooden table surface before speaking with an incredibly sharp tone, filled with absolute conviction. If you do not execute this maneuver right now, they will simply find another twisted way to completely destroy your self-esteem all over again. Do not show any mercy whatsoever toward individuals who repeatedly refuse to even treat you like a decent human being. I slowly nodded my head while feeling the familiar lump in my throat finally dissolve into pure, calculated determination. You are completely right about them because it is finally time for all of them to actually pay for their own extravagant lives. I took one final deep breath to forcibly expel every last lingering drop of misplaced sympathy from my exhausted emotional system. Without allowing myself another second of useless hesitation or guilt, I decisively clicked the final confirmation button flashing brightly on the desktop monitor. That single decisive action instantly triggered an automated security cascade throughout the entire commercial banking network connected to the trust. I sat back in my chair while watching the status icons turn red, knowing I had officially severed the financial oxygen supply fueling their entirely fake reality, while permanently locking them out of my inherited wealth. 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning found me sitting directly across from my lawyer, Douglas, inside a remarkably quiet office, completely permeated by the distinct scent of old parchment paper mixed with printer ink. Douglas carefully spread the extensive commercial trust agreement across his massive mahogany desk before methodically reviewing every single strict stipulation established by my late grandmother. He specifically directed my attention toward a highly specific legal clause expressly prohibiting any form of public defamation or hostile interference directed at the designated trust manager. My grandmother had perfectly anticipated their greedy nature by embedding these protective mechanisms into the foundational framework of her commercial empire. After meticulously examining the printed screenshots containing those vicious telegram messages, he confirmed we possessed undeniable legal leverage to terminate the commercial lease agreement housing Gregory's technology startup. The toxic digital evidence perfectly satisfied the breach of contract requirements necessary to legally revoke his $0 rent privilege without requiring any lengthy mediation process. We possessed concrete documented proof showing the primary beneficiary actively humiliating the authorized trustee in a highly public digital forum. However, Douglas maintained a highly serious demeanor while thoroughly analyzing the inevitable collateral damage associated with executing such a devastating financial maneuver against a massive narcissist. He explicitly warned me that once the commercial eviction notice alongside the unilateral divorce petition were formally served, Gregory would absolutely retaliate using exceptionally dirty tactics to regain his lost control. Men who built their entire fragile egos upon unearned wealth rarely surrendered their stolen kingdoms without orchestrating a massive smear campaign against the person dethroning them. Douglas wanted to ensure I was psychologically prepared to handle the incoming storm of gaslighting alongside endless manipulative phone calls from my relatives. I completely understood the severe risks involved in this aggressive legal strategy, but my burning determination had completely overshadowed any lingering traces of anxiety regarding his predictable temper tantrums. I firmly instructed him to immediately proceed with drafting the formal 14-day commercial eviction notice, while simultaneously preparing a comprehensive divorce filing demanding absolute full custody of my daughter. I also insisted on establishing an absolute financial separation to firmly prevent him from acquiring even a single penny from the inherited trust fund during the upcoming hostile divorce settlement proceedings. The legal framework surrounding the commercial property was incredibly airtight, because Evelyn had structured the holding company to automatically expel any occupant violating the decency clauses. Douglas spent the next hour diligently preparing the official legal paperwork while simultaneously contacting a highly reliable certified process server to properly coordinate the exact delivery timing for maximum psychological impact. We strategically arranged to have the eviction notice delivered directly to his corporate headquarters during peak operational hours to ensure his public facade shattered before his employees. He eventually slid the massive finalized stack of documents across the polished mahogany surface while silently pointing toward the various signature lines requiring my immediate formal authorization. After reading through every single page with meticulous attention to detail to ensure zero loopholes existed, I picked up the heavy metal pen to initiate the complete destruction of their parasitic existence. Douglas looked directly at me through his thick spectacles while maintaining an incredibly solemn facial expression specifically designed to test my ultimate resolve before crossing the final legal threshold. Victoria, I truly need you to understand this highly volatile situation with absolute clarity before we proceed any further down this particular path. If you officially sign this document while permanently stripping away his entire business premises, there will be absolutely no turning back for anyone involved. The resulting hostility from your soon-to-be ex-husband will certainly explode terribly across your entire social circle. I placed the pen back onto the desk while looking straight into his eyes before offering him an incredibly cold response, devoid of any hesitation. I absolutely do not need to secure any potential way back to that incredibly toxic life, Douglas. I simply need to establish an impenetrable boundary between my young daughter and those ungrateful parasites. That single authorized signature completely empowered the judicial system to officially deliver these devastating financial consequences directly into the unsuspecting hands of those arrogant traitors. I walked out of that quiet law office feeling a profound sense of liberation because the invisible chains binding me to their relentless financial abuse were finally severed forever. Exactly at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, my secured financial management dashboard began relentlessly displaying a cascading series of violently declined transaction alerts. I was sitting completely alone inside my quiet living room without directly witnessing their immediate physical reactions to the unfolding catastrophe. However, through those glaring red banking error notifications rapidly filling up my screen, I could perfectly visualize their fake empire collapsing piece by piece. Gregory became the very first casualty when his primary corporate credit card was brutally declined while attempting to finalize a massive catering bill for a crucial client luncheon. The restaurant manager publicly confiscated his platinum card right in front of his highly influential business partners, instantly shattering his carefully cultivated image of immense startup wealth. His tech company effectively lost all liquid assets within minutes, completely exposing his fraudulent success to the exact people he constantly tried to impress. Just 1 hour later, the financial demolition violently struck Jared when the aggressive repo team arrived unannounced at his expensive downtown parking garage. The aggressive collection agents physically hooked his beloved sports car onto their tow truck because the corporate vehicle lease guarantee had been officially terminated due to contract violations. Jared was forced to stand helplessly on the concrete pavement while watching his ultimate status symbol being dragged away in broad daylight without possessing any personal funds to stop them. Finally, Martha experienced her own brand of profound public humiliation directly beside the checkout registers of a remarkably expensive organic supermarket. The cashier loudly informed her that the prestigious supplementary card she always flashed around her country club friends was reporting a permanent administrative freeze. She was forced to abandon 3 overflowing shopping carts filled with luxurious items while enduring the silently judging stares from dozens of wealthy shoppers waiting behind her in line. My phone immediately started vibrating aggressively against the glass coffee table, as dozens of frantic text messages alongside desperate missed calls flooded my notification screen. Gregory left a highly erratic voicemail message filled with a bizarre mixture of immense entitlement mixed with genuine rising panic. Victoria, the bank is playing some ridiculous game with my corporate accounts right now. My company cards are completely locked out. You need to call them to fix this massive error immediately. I listened to the entire frantic audio recording without feeling even a slight twinge of pity before casually pressing the delete icon to erase his demanding voice forever. I simply placed the silenced phone face down on the table to completely ignore their chaos, while quietly returning to the peaceful task of organizing my daughter's scattered building blocks. I absolutely refused to play the miserable role of their financial savior ever again, choosing instead to let them fully experience the terrifying reality of existing without my invisible protection. They were finally forced to confront the disastrous consequences of violently biting the exact hand that had spent a decade silently funding their arrogant illusions. The impenetrable financial boundaries I established just 2 days ago were actively functioning exactly as designed to completely dismantle their parasitic ecosystem. They were finally realizing that mocking the designated trust manager carried incredibly severe real-world penalties that no amount of manipulative gaslighting could ever reverse. By the beginning of the second week, the sheer panic began to completely escape the physical confines of our family to manifest directly across the digital landscape. The massive commercial eviction notice pasted prominently across the glass entrance of his corporate headquarters generated an immediate shockwave throughout his entire professional network. Dozens of confused employees arriving for their morning shifts were forcibly locked out of the building while reading the official legal document explicitly detailing massive unpaid leasing fees. These individuals, alongside vital business partners within that infamous internal Telegram group chat, immediately began questioning Gregory regarding his actual managerial competence. The highly visible legal declaration thoroughly contradicted every single boastful claim he had previously made regarding his highly successful startup funding rounds. Those exact same individuals who previously flooded the chat with laughing emojis, while mercilessly mocking my physical appearance, finally realized the undeniable truth regarding his corporate assets. A massive wave of collective panic washed over the group participants as they frantically attempted to delete their cruel remarks from the digital server history. They rapidly transitioned from acting like ruthless bullies to terrified bystanders while aggressively demanding a logical explanation from the man they previously worshipped as a visionary leader. Several cowardly colleagues even attempted to send me private direct messages filled with pathetic apologies claiming Gregory had manipulated them into participating in the public humiliation. They finally understood that the supposedly useless wife was actually the invisible financial architect single-handedly keeping their monthly paychecks from violently bouncing. A prominent business partner eventually lost his patience after watching Gregory ignore the escalating questions before sending a highly aggressive text message directly into the main company channel. "Gregory, you constantly claimed this company was raising massive capital successfully. So why exactly is there a property seizure notice detailing massive rental debts on the front door? Stop lying to us immediately." The chat remained completely silent for several agonizing minutes before Gregory hastily responded with an incredibly weak defense mechanism, attempting to desperately salvage his rapidly disintegrating professional reputation. "Everyone please remain perfectly calm, because this entire situation is simply a massive paperwork misunderstanding that my accounting department is currently resolving." Absolutely nobody believed his pathetic fabrications anymore, causing the entire fraudulent credibility of the fake startup CEO to violently shatter into a million irreparable pieces. Instead of taking any personal accountability for their own vicious participation in my public humiliation, Jared alongside Martha quickly redirected their intense fury toward Gregory. They ruthlessly blamed him for recklessly provoking my wrath through his idiotic social media posts, thereby triggering the catastrophic loss of their beloved financial allowances. The lavish lifestyle they had comfortably enjoyed for numerous consecutive years was entirely eradicated because of his uncontrollable narcissistic desire to mock me publicly. They bombarded his personal inbox with vicious accusations, while simultaneously blaming each other for failing to recognize the severe legal power I possessed over the trust fund. Martha loudly complained about losing her elite country club status, while Jared furiously demanded that Gregory personally compensate him for the recently repossessed sports car. They completely abandoned their previous unshakable loyalty the exact moment their luxury credit cards were permanently declined by the banking institutions. I witnessed their spectacular internal collapse unfolding in real time through various anonymous screenshots secretly forwarded to my personal phone by a deeply regretful former colleague. Watching them viciously tear each other apart over evaporating financial resources served as the ultimate proof that their familial bond was exclusively built upon monetary greed. Their entire relationship dynamic required my continuous financial sacrifices to effectively mask their inherent selfishness from violently destroying one another. I calmly downloaded every single screenshot into a secure digital folder to serve as a permanent reminder of why I must never look back. I simply sat inside my peaceful apartment while scrolling through the chaotic digital evidence, feeling absolutely no remorse for dismantling a toxic ecosystem that never truly valued my basic human dignity. 7 o'clock on Saturday evening found me walking confidently toward a secluded corner booth inside a highly exclusive steakhouse located on Newbury Street, just as their aggressively demanded meeting dictated. Gregory, Martha, alongside Jared were already seated around the polished wooden table waiting for my arrival in absolute silence, while awkwardly avoiding direct eye contact with one another. Their previously unshakable arrogance had been completely replaced by an atmosphere of extreme palpable tension radiating from their rigidly frozen postures. However, Gregory still maintained a deeply stubborn glint within his narrowing eyes, clearly refusing to gracefully accept his undeniable financial defeat. Instead of offering a genuinely sincere apology for his cruel public behavior, he immediately deployed his favorite psychological manipulation tactics, attempting to forcefully reverse the narrative. He aggressively accused me of acting entirely too emotional regarding a completely harmless digital situation, while audaciously claiming my supposedly irrational financial retaliation was selfishly destroying their future stability. Gregory violently slammed his open palm against the polished wooden table surface before growling his ridiculous accusations through tightly gritted teeth while completely ignoring the surrounding restaurant patrons. You are completely overreacting to this minor digital situation because you are actively trying to destroy my entire company while simultaneously tearing this family apart over some harmless jokes. I absolutely refuse to explode into a dramatic public argument or match his rapidly escalating vocal volume inside that incredibly crowded upscale dining room. Maintaining perfect emotional composure throughout his entire tantrum allowed me to slowly unzip my leather handbag to extract a remarkably thick manila folder containing the finalized legal documents. I forcefully dropped the heavy stack of official papers directly onto the center of the dining table, generating a loud thud that instantly silenced their manipulative complaints. The heavy folder contained the fully executed unilateral divorce petition, alongside the comprehensive asset revocation reports generated by the commercial trust attorneys earlier that exact same week. I calmly flipped through the heavily stamped pages while pointing a firm index finger directly at the massive corporate debt numbers Gregory was now legally obligated to shoulder entirely alone. I wanted to completely eradicate any lingering delusional hopes they secretly harbored regarding my potential submission or willingness to reverse these permanent banking decisions. Martha attempted to reach across the table with trembling hands to grab my wrist, perhaps desperately hoping to utilize some fake maternal affection to soften my unbreakable resolve. I smoothly pulled my arm back out of her physical reach, while keeping my eyes firmly locked onto the disastrous financial statements explicitly detailing their impending personal bankruptcy proceedings. Jared stared blankly at the commercial legal eviction notice bearing his signature, as a corporate dependent finally comprehending the absolute finality of his ruined luxury lifestyle. They were finally sitting face to face with the devastating real-world consequences of their own malicious entitlement, without possessing any protective buffer to shield their fragile egos from the incoming destruction. Every single page within that massive legal folder represented a definitive boundary closing a decade-long chapter of unreciprocated financial sacrifice, alongside continuous emotional abuse. I offered him an incredibly cold smile before sliding the finalized divorce petition directly toward his trembling hands to finalize our ultimate interaction. You are completely mistaken about my intentions, because I am not destroying anything whatsoever, while simply stopping the massive financial payments required to maintain your delusional greatness. I pushed my chair back from the table while delivering the final verbal blow. That is the very last time any of you will ever possess the legal or personal right to call my name again. The precise moment I stood up from my luxurious leather dining chair, I deliberately made piercing eye contact with every single person sitting around that completely shocked table. I delivered my final unspoken verdict through that icy glare before turning my back on the exact individuals who had spent a decade ruthlessly exploiting my quiet generosity. My final departure successfully abandoned them, sitting there frozen in absolute shock alongside a massive premium steakhouse bill their permanently deactivated credit cards could never possibly cover. 6 months later, the thick layers of Boston's winter snow finally melted away to reveal a remarkably calm yet deeply scarred new beginning. The brutal reality of the situation arrived without a single ounce of mercy, as Gregory was forcefully compelled to file for total corporate bankruptcy. He was officially left drowning underneath a massive mountain of insurmountable personal debt, directly resulting from the permanent loss of my commercial financial guarantees. Without my invisible protection shielding his fragile ego, his entire professional reputation evaporated overnight among the city's elite technological investment circles. The corporate bankruptcy court thoroughly liquidated all remaining physical assets belonging to the technology startup, leaving the former executives completely stunned by the rapid downfall. Gregory was permanently blacklisted by every single major venture capital firm operating throughout the East Coast, forcing him to face the grim reality of actually applying for entry-level positions. Martha, alongside Jared, were promptly evicted from the luxurious downtown apartment I previously funded, without ever questioning their exorbitant monthly expenses. Both of them are currently struggling to survive by working incredibly exhausting menial labor jobs just to barely cover their essential daily living costs. Martha was recently spotted working the night shift at a local laundromat, a stark contrast to the glamorous socialite persona she previously maintained with such arrogant pride. Jared struggled immensely to adapt to his new reality, working as a basic delivery driver, while constantly complaining about his achy muscles to anyone willing to listen. I actively monitored these developments through various mutual acquaintances, without ever feeling the slightest urge to intervene or offer them a financial lifeline. The supposedly complex divorce proceedings concluded surprisingly quickly because Gregory completely lacked the necessary financial resources to wage a lengthy custody battle. The finalized divorce papers arrived in my mailbox precisely when the autumn leaves began falling across the Boston pavement, officially symbolizing the absolute conclusion of that nightmare. I successfully reclaimed absolute control over my inherited commercial assets, while permanently severing all communication channels with those incredibly ruthless blood relatives. Truthfully speaking, achieving this massive legal victory did not automatically grant me a feeling of unadulterated joy or absolute perfect happiness. Winning the financial war was absolutely necessary to ensure a stable future for my daughter amidst the surrounding chaotic family environment. However, I still experienced genuine emotional pain from being forcefully compelled to permanently discard individuals sharing my exact same biological bloodline. Walking away from a highly toxic family dynamic requires an enormous amount of psychological endurance that leaves permanent invisible scars behind. Representing the production team behind this channel, we proudly present this story for purely educational purposes regarding the establishment of strict personal boundaries. We aim to thoroughly demonstrate how victims can effectively manage severe emotional crises utilizing rational thinking alongside strict legal protocols. Objectively evaluating the entire dramatic situation clearly demonstrates how Victoria decisively protected her own mental health by executing a total financial cutoff without displaying any hesitation. The manipulative antagonists ultimately suffered the completely inevitable, devastating consequences directly resulting from their own terribly misguided personal choices, alongside their unbelievably arrogant public betrayal against a supportive spouse. Looking back across the incredibly stormy journey I recently survived, I want to share some vital life lessons with you. You should never ever make excuses for the deliberate cruelty of other individuals simply because they share your biological family name. Biological ties do not grant anyone a free pass to continuously trample upon your fundamental human dignity without facing consequences. Whenever you finally stop providing unconditional financial sacrifices to ungrateful people, the true parasitic nature of those manipulative exploiters will immediately become fully exposed. Executing a permanent cutoff is never an act of cold-blooded malice, but rather the most courageous action possible to passionately protect your self-worth while creating a remarkably healthy environment for your children. I sincerely thank you, viewers, for patiently listening to my turbulent story until the very final minute. Successfully escaping a highly toxic family dynamic requires establishing incredibly firm boundaries alongside absolute unwavering determination. If you found yourself publicly betrayed by loved ones, would you fiercely fight back or quietly walk away? Please take a moment to share your personal thoughts regarding my decisions within the comments section below.